Robin Young, it's so good to see you again, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on Transformations.
No, it's great to be here, Mark. It's great to be here. It's been a while since we've talked.
Yeah, and you've been traveling all over. I mean, one of your, I think, callings in life is being a healer, a paramedic, and
Mhm.
and right now you're a global medic. I
Mhm.
mean, what are you seeing right now, and where have you been recently? Are you in the Middle East
Well,
or?
well, the Global Medical Organization is a humanitarian organization run out of Toronto, headed by Raoul Singh, who was a student at Humber College when I was there, and so it's interesting that we've kind of come full circle and connected again. I was recently in Moldova. The two recent ones, I was in Romania and Moldova,
Hmm.
um, uh, packing food products and that sort of thing into boxes. And in Romania, driving them over the border to Ukraine. Very short, not too far, just a couple hundred kilometers, and was the most away from the war zone and that. But bringing food product in for the displaced persons who are running from the war. So that was in Romania. I was there for 3 weeks, and then in Moldova, I was there for a couple of weeks. We were kind of uh, taking a look at the project that Global Medic was doing there and writing a report on that, on how successful they were and that sort of thing. But again, getting food to Ukraine to help out the people that are running from the war. They're running west away from the war,
Right.
trying to get as far away as possible. So yeah, so that was the last two. I've been to, I think, 11 countries with Global Medic since 2008. So
And who does that
yeah.
report go to when you make a report? Is that going to the
Well,
UN? Is that going to the Global Medic Association of something?
well, for the Romanian one, the report, or sorry, the Moldova one is going back to Global Medic, and that was going to be built on and sent to the funders, the people that fund the
Okay.
project. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Most of the work that's being done, we're in the Caribbean right now because of the storm out there, and it's water filtration, purification, getting clean water to people, because of the, after a storm or after an earthquake or those sorts of things. Water supply is typically contaminated,
Yeah.
or it gets contaminated very quickly or goes bad very quickly, because of the damage to the infrastructure. So what we do is we go in, we bring in either small or medium-sized power filters, or basically gravity filled filters that we can supply to each household, and so they can get some fresh drinking water so they don't get sick. And hopefully it gets them over the hump of the disaster, so they can, once the infrastructure is repaired, they can get back and get the clean water sources from the city or the county or wherever. We're doing that in Morocco right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
You need to come to the US and help Michigan get the
Yeah.
gasoline petrol out of the water. I
Yeah.
mean, things like
uh-huh.
that are I see as just so ridiculous because the amount of money we have in here in the US, you're in Canada, just so our
Hmm.
listeners know. And the amount of money we spend on war, and we can't even fix and replace water systems. I mean, it's
Yeah,
ridiculous. And
yeah,
roads
it
and
is
bridges.
a sad contrast, a very sad contrast.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, but
Yeah, but what we can do, we do.
yeah.
We have our issues up here in Canada as well, and but we do what we can do is kind of my motto, right? I'll do what I
Yeah,
can,
right.
what I got sometimes. Yeah.
How does your group or the Global Medic Group or others that you work with decide on where the most humanitarian need is, that you guys have
Mhm.
specialty in that, and to go to Moldova versus Syria or somewhere
Yeah,
else?
yeah. We won't go directly to combat zones or anything like that,
Okay.
or where it's very politically unstable. So,
Yeah.
just safety reasons and considerations like that. But typically, either there will be a call out for international humanitarian aid. Sometimes we'll apply for grants. Sometimes we most often partner with a group over there. Okay, a charity over there, or a group over there. Might be through the religious organizations. It might be through other humanitarian groups. And so once you partner up and we get permission to go, then we can head out. But there obviously has to be permission to go. Yeah,
Right.
from that country.
And are you doing as in this role as a global medic? It sounds like there's a lot of humanitarian aid that's going in, water, grain, filtering, maybe food supplies. But are you also doing a lot of, I mean, medical stuff, triage, helping
Well,
hospitals, doctors?
yeah, it depends. When I first joined Global Medic in 2008, that was my aim, to do a lot of medical work. My background's in paramedicine. I taught paramedicine for 30 years. Excuse me. So my aim was to go do some field medicine. But it shifted. So my first couple of gigs were Cambodia and Angola. They sent me out there, and it was actually a teaching gig. And we were working with a mine advisory group, so clearing landmines. And what we were doing
Wow.
was we were teaching the medical people there, the people attached to the teams, we were teaching a medical course to a trauma medical course. So that was more of a teaching gig. Then I was hoping to get medical stuff, but typically in a disaster, especially the medical needs are within the first week. So if it's an earthquake, say in Morocco, there was an earthquake, or I was in Nepal when there was a big earthquake there. The Philippines and Tacloban when a big super typhoon hit. The medical needs, the traumatic medical needs especially, are within the first week. And sadly, the people either, they make it, or unfortunately they don't, or they're stabilized and then they're released. After the first week, it's usually the typical medical things that are always there, or it becomes food because of food insecurity, because of destroyed food or whatever the case is, lack of transportation of food into the area, or it's water purification. So, I
Yeah.
haven't really done any official medical stuff with Global Medic because it's always shifted to water purification or food distribution or things like that. But, excuse me, the first teams that landed in Tacloban in the Philippines, excuse me, first teams that landed in Tacloban in the Philippines, and the first teams that landed in Nepal after the earthquake there. They were more involved with medical things. They set up a huge inflatable tent, and because the hospital was destroyed basically. So they took the equipment out of the hospital and that sort of thing, put it in the tent, and they were able to see emergency patients through the tent. And the Global Medic volunteers helped with that. So that in that case, yes, we were more directly involved with the medical aspect of things. But other than that, after that first week and a bit, typically shift over to water purification and food security.
You work as a global medic now. You come out of paramedicine. So what made you want to? I mean, paramedics see a lot of scary stuff, car
Mm-hmm.
accidents, all kinds of things. What made you want to
Mm-hmm.
go into that side of medicine?
I have no idea. Actually, initially academic, and a bit of a thirst for adventure. I had been with the Canadian Army Reserve for a little bit as a medic there. Never deployed, nothing to brag about, but I was part of that organization, which was absolutely wonderful. I learned a lot. In university, I took health studies, so it was a lot about medical aspects of things, and so that got my interest in there. I was also interested in teaching. After university, one of the projects I did in university was on paramedicine, because at that time we didn't have advanced care paramedicine. We had basic, it was a 1-year program, advanced first aid, oxygen, and that sort of thing, and rapid transport. But in the States, they had paramedicine. Thank you to the emergency. They remember the old TV program. A lot of
Yep.
people got involved because of emergency. Johnny and Roy show. So there's also that aspect of it. But I did a project in university on paramedicine that got me interested. And from university, I went to Humber College in Toronto to take the 1-year program. While I was a student there, because I had anatomy in university and physiology in university, they asked if I was interested in teaching night school. So my colleague and I, who both graduate or were both in the course, we were both hired as part-time instructors at night to teach anatomy and physiology. And from there, I worked with Toronto Ambulance for a period of time, and I kept teaching. So that's kind of how I got into it, almost by fluke, really. And so when I certainly working in Toronto, in the downtown core of Toronto, and that is, yeah, definitely you see a variety of incidents, everything from, colds and flus to severe trauma from whatever cause. And that's also the interest of it, is the problem solving of emergency medicine. I'm not a doctor, I don't claim to be, but there at a certain level, there's things you can do to prolong someone's life. And for me, that was a big thing. And again, it probably comes from the influence of my medical stuff in the reserves, and my courses that I took, and personally, my sense of compassion and empathy for people that are in suffering situations. And that probably led me into global medic as well.
Right, right.
Yeah.
What are
But
some?
mhm.
No, please.
Certainly the journey has been eventful. From teaching, from working as a medic, and it was only in the field for a short period of time, but it gave me enough experience to bring those lessons into the classroom. And I can talk about a broken arm, I can talk about a heart attack, I can talk about all that kind of stuff, and the students will sit there and go, yeah, write notes. But as soon as I say, well, I remember this one call, and you see everybody light up because they're interested in the reality of it. And so for me, that was the wonderful thing, that I could bring those experiences from the road into the classroom and really hit home what is, what the seriousness and the reality of the situation were. And, through doing the practical exercises with the students, and really drilling in on, well, no, you need to know your protocols. You need to know this, you need to follow that. You need to be conscious of your timeline. You need to be aware of your resources, on and on and on and on. You need to be aware of the scale of the situation. Is one person having a heart attack, or is it 10 people in a multi-car collision? How do you organize that? How do you control that? And how do you get the best care to those people as they need? So it was wonderful to be able to bring that into the classroom and talk about that.
Yeah,
I played a game with them. In the mornings, I'd walk in and I'd say, first call, your very first shift. And I'd throw a picture up on the screen. I didn't have to imagine it. I mean, it might have been a train collision from the night before. And I just throw this thing up and I said, what are you going to do? And it wasn't to scare them. It was to get them thinking, to get past that, oh my gosh, there's 10 people on the ground or whatever. To get them thinking, to get them organizing their thoughts, to get a sense of what are their priorities, and how do I first start off this whole mess of a call and make it into something that's controllable. So that was a great gig. I loved it, but that's kind of how I got into it all. With Global Medic, I got a phone call from the founder, and he asked me if I was interested in joining the group. And in a very short time after that, they sent me to Cambodia to do a teaching gig for a week on blast trauma injuries and management. Yeah, and it was, certainly it was enlightening. I read a lot of history, I read a lot of military history and that sort of thing. I have an appreciation and understanding at a very minor level. But to be in a country that was, at war, then civil war, then, invasion and everything else for a period of time, and seeing the effects even 30 years later, be it Cambodia or Angola when I was there, and see still the effects of, landmines that are still being found. People are still being injured by those, and seeing people walk around with one leg and whatever on crutches, it says, yeah, well, this is the reality of what I read about, and it was a very eye-opening experience. You talk about transitions or transformative experiences, and that certainly was one of them, to bring that what we call it, the sort of the idea of war from reading and appreciation, definitely, to a little closer to the reality of war, and getting a sense of, wow, this actually happened to these people. I mean, even going in Moldova and Romania, and seeing, the effects of people moving away from that war, and basically just trying to survive. Yeah. So certainly there's transformative stuff there for me to say, wow, this is the reality of what's going on in the world.
Right. I think they say there's still, landmines all over Vietnam.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, they'll still unexploded ordnance from World War One.
Yeah. You think we'd have
Caliber.
some satellite technology that could detect where it is and then just go in and clean it up? I mean,
yeah. Well, that's the difficulty, is going in, A, finding them, and B, going in and cleaning them up, because there's a lot of unknowns. I mean, when people put down, I understand it, whoever will put down a field of landmines or an area of landmines, and then after the war, they don't know where they are. Nobody tells them. There's no plans or anything. So, and sometimes they're very, very organized. Okay, this area has this many landmines, or they don't. when we were briefed in Angola, the guy said, let me put it this way, size of a football field. There could be 1,000 mines there, or there could be one mine. You don't
Right.
want to go anywhere near it, right?
That's called stress.
That's called stress. Exactly, exactly. But it was an eye opener. And even while we were there, we're talking to our liaison person who was a ex-British engineer who was there working on the projects of demining, and he got a call. And he goes up, he just found a 81 millimeter mortar or whatever it was in the field that washed up after a storm. And it's probably from 1970s and that. So he went, disarmed it, put it in the bunker for later disposal. But yeah, that's the reality,
So,
But other places I've been, certainly I've been to, I was at Cambodia, Angola, I was in the Philippines, Tacloban, I was in Nepal, I was in the Caribbean a few times, to the Bahamas after the storm there, Haiti, I was in Haiti, where else, gosh, and a few other places, let's say, with the last ones being in Europe, and I'll probably be going to Morocco in a couple of weeks. So yeah, because of the earthquake they had over there.
right, right.
Yeah.
So you're helping people, and you get to see the world too and experience more things. I mean, very
Well,
transformative.
absolutely.
Mhm.
It's definitely an interesting way to travel.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is difficult work, and the living conditions aren't the greatest,
Right.
especially if you're first on the ground. I've been second, third, fourth on the ground sort of thing, so I've been a little more fortunate than the first group in. Sometimes if it's a serious thing, they have to find their fixer, find their contact person, get organized as far as where to stay and that sort of thing, and then find out where to do their work. Other areas are a lot more stable, and you can go in and stay in a hotel or something like that and do the work from there. But the end result is the work gets done. I talk about the most appropriate work for what is needed at that time, right? And so that's what we aim to do there. Yeah. But it isn't all that. I mean, sometimes we do have a day or two off to take a look around. But again, the focus is
When you were teaching students paramedicine, and you're putting photos up on the screen, and you have practical experience to share, that's got to be a big mind shift from when they actually get out of that classroom and
I think
into the
so. Yeah.
ambulance, right? I mean, for you as well, right?
Yeah.
Seeing, your first stabbing, your first car crash was,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
do you
And
how
that
do you kind
and
of
that's what.
navigate
Mhm.
that in your mind?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that certainly I went through, and I think every medical person has gone through, is the first time you do something, the first time you do CPR, and the first time you go to that stabbing or shooting or whatever car crash. I talk a lot about in my classes in paramedicine, but as well as in martial arts, talk about the sympathetic nervous system and the panic response, and the want to get away from that discomfort, right? But the overriding need through training, experience, etc., to stay there and do your job, right? And typically, it's the first one is always a lot more difficult because of the amount of uncertainty. You have training, but you're doing say CPR on a person, and the insecurities that am I doing it right? Are my compressions deep enough? Is my count right? Oh, my cracking a rib, is that a good thing or a bad thing? On and on and on and on. And then you get to your 10th, 15th, 20th, 100th one. You're still nervous. You're still doing your best. You're still doing it, but you know what to expect.
Right.
And so the confidence level is a lot greater. And then sometimes you'll come to that maybe 105th CPR situation, and you're right back to ground zero because maybe you recognize the person, or you think you recognize the person. Something that person might remind you of, gosh, my father died of a heart attack, or that looks like ... And so it kicks in that uncertainty and fear and everything else again. So the certainly experience, rehearsal, practice, talking and training go a large way, but we're all still vulnerable to the psychological aspects of what we do, and in emergency services, be it police, fire, ambulance, military, the idea of, occupation-related stress injuries, PTSD or that sort of thing, they're very real, and people do suffer from them. And, one of the experiences I had at the college was revamping their psychology course to really emphasize the need for mental health care self-care, resilience, familiarity with what might happen out there. So there, a lot of, again, going back to that transformative kind of thing, the idea of me being able to transform something, shift something into something different, which is hopefully better for the student, or when they get out in the field and are able to do their jobs, that they're not hampered or affected by what they're seeing and what they're doing. They will be, and they have been. And I've known a lot of people that have suffered, and but again, I go back to, well, I'm doing my best, or I did my best at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
I imagine there's got to be a skill set for one, seeing the horrific nature of whatever you've found on the scene,
Mm-hmm.
and then two, taking that fight or flight to not flight and focus it on the fight, right? To
Yeah.
go in to the car, to the building, whatever it's going to be, and then being able to, in the midst of that stress, parse out what's going on and make your hierarchy of treatment, right? And your plan.
Yeah.
And
The short term is assess, plan, act, reassess.
right.
Within that are these huge protocols and flow charts and everything else. But definitely, if I have those things memorized and practiced and almost drilled into me at a DNA level on how to recognize things, how to plan and what plan to put into place and what actions to do, and reassess it to make sure it's working. And if it's not, go back to reassess and plan and act, and just keep that loop going. If I have that pattern, right, same as martial arts, if I have that pattern, it becomes easier to execute. So for me, and the college experience for the students is to take them from they know nothing, to build them up academically, build them up skillfully, to teach them the individual skills, to put them in a bit of a stress inoculation thing with practical skills and then practical testing, and then a little more uncertainty, and making them aware of complications that could happen, but making them aware that they have to stick to the protocols to make sure that the best outcome is possible. So the idea is to bring them as closer to reality as we can in the college setting. So we have simulation mannequins that will blink and talk and breathe and cough, and it's really amazing. It's like an aspect of robotics and computer technology that is coming to the forefront in medical education and that. So what we could do is remove the instructions right from the room and have them do their thing, And so, sometimes it's built to fail. I mean, we're not going to always be successful in whatever we do. Failure is part of our life. I mean, a few things I wouldn't mind talking about with that aspect of things. But even with the failure, there are major lessons. Okay, so paramedicine is like, well, in the debrief of, say, a scenario that had negative patient outcome, right? Patient died, say, well, what happened, what went right, what went wrong, what can we do next time to if this person is going to survive, or if there's going to be a more positive outcome, what can we do to kind of move it in that direction? Did we get caught up on something, not as a judgment, to say you did bad, but to say, well, when you did this, what was your reasoning, or why do you think that worked or didn't work? So the educational aspect to move them forward, but to bring them closer to reality with the amount of stress and complexity of a medical case. So that's rewarding, and the students, I think, really appreciate that, because the next phase is to get them on the road with an ambulance paramedic crew as a student and let them start to experience the reality of the field. And what that is, going to calls and maybe first just observing or helping with the lifting or carrying the bags and that sort of thing, to starting to do their basic assessments and basic treatments, to working almost as a third crew member on more advanced calls, depending on what the college allows them to do as far as medications and that sort of thing. But that is the next step, to bring them that closer to the reality of what they're going to see on their own. I can remember, my first calls when I got out of the college. It's like we get the call and they turn around to see where my crew is, and then I realized, no, I am the crew. It's on me. I have to make all those decisions. There's nobody there to help me. Well, my partner is, but we have to sit there and figure this out ourselves. We can't rely on our teachers anymore because we are the person. So it is an interesting development, or transformation from student to paramedic, to ambulance person to paramedic, to get there and actually be the one that makes the decisions, and live with the positive, negative consequences, etc. You know. So yeah, so when I look back at my paramedicine teaching and that sort of thing, it's been, I think I retired 7 years ago or whatever. Kind of related to this, I formed a company years ago to teach paramedic self-defense, because there's nothing out there in Canada anyway. I think there's a few places in the States, a few companies in the States that will do it. But the idea that, well, medics are attacked, physically attacked, verbally attacked, everything, but there wasn't that much out there to teach them what to do. So I put together a program to, 1 day or 2 day program to give them some indication of what's happening, what to recognize, what their bodies are going through, under stress, and most of all, how to get away from the situation. As martial artists, we learn to fight. We
Right.
kind of forget everything before and everything after. We're just focused here. But, and I move that in my martial art teaching too, as well. Recognize everything before the actual fight, and you might not have to fight. Recognize the body language, recognize the distancing, all those sorts of things. Recognize the situation, situational awareness, right? What is happening here? Are things escalating? If they're escalating, am I aware they're escalating? Do I want it to escalate? Probably not. But recognize it and be able to either de-escalate or run away. I'm a big fan of running away.
Yeah.
But
So your book,
yeah,
the book is called Self-Defense for Paramedics.
yeah.
And I wonder why it is that paramedics are being attacked. Is it because the neighborhoods they're in, or because people want the drugs,
Mhm.
in their vehicle or in their packs,
Mhm.
or why is it that people are attacking?
Mostly here in this area anyway. I would say it's probably due to the stress of the patient. They're in a crisis situation, so their amount of logic or
Mm.
interpretation of events is skewed, and they're in a panic situation. So, they're going to say, "Get away from me," and swing or something like that.
Hmm.
Other times, they may see the uniform, the paramedic uniform, as a threat, as a sign of authority, and they don't like that. So they may act out because of that aspect of things. Mostly it's I would say more stress situations, and that idea of, well, I interpret you as a threat to what I am or who I am. In situations under stress or in dark, medics will look like cops. They got the
Hmm.
vests on in the air and all that sort of stuff. Some people don't like police officers. I just listened to your interview with Bob Clark, right?
Uh-huh.
And talking about law enforcement and that sort of thing. Sometimes people do not want that. I've been to calls where people have been phenomenally protective of the injured person and didn't want anybody near them, and that almost led to physical altercations and that sort of thing. So, a variety of reasons, and sometimes absolutely it has to do with drugs or whatever.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm,
Hmm.
mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
this is a good segue into talking about martial arts. Um, and you have a long history of martial arts, of training in different styles, uh, in Hung Kyun, Aikido, um, all kinds of of doing lion dance. So
Yeah.
let's talk about what is it that attracted you to martial arts, and what is it that kept you in martial arts?
Mm-hmm. Um, both good questions. I don't
I,
know. The reality, when I was a kid, I started in '68. I was 8 years old, and I was just hanging around with older kids that joined. And I ended up sticking around where everybody else kind of faded away. My sifu, James Lor King Hong, and Jack Tin Fong, both knew my mom. We're all part of the community near Chinatown. And so that probably, had something to do with it. They kind of took me under their wing to teach me and look after me and that sort of thing. Um, so that was the beginning of, my training. And then I kind of just liked it,
right.
and
And what
it was a
styles
place.
were they teaching?
They taught Hungar and Choy Li Fut.
Hmm.
But Jimmy Lore had four or five different teachers in his childhood and adult life. Each of them were Southern Hung or Choy Li Fut style.
Okay.
So, I can't say my lineage is from Long Pei Hung, or I can't say that because there's kind of a movement of these instructors into this one person.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of calling it Hungar or Hongkun, I call it Lore's Hongkun, my teacher's Hongkun.
Yeah.
So just not to avoid confusion,
Mm-hmm.
Jack Chin was a Choy Li Fut guy, and his movement was definitely Choy Li Fut. So, combination of those things. So when I teach both of their kind of approaches to the martial art, so that's how it started, back then. What kept me in it? Probably I wasn't bad at it for my interpretation of what I was doing. I wasn't bad at it, and it was a safe place. I grew up in a kind of in poverty and had some lots of life challenges way back then, so it was a safe place. And so so I went. It was open then. I think 5 nights a week. I went 5 nights a week because it was pretty cool. And I learned things. Then I became better at it. It was also a way. I'm part Chinese. I'm 1/4 Chinese. But I didn't speak the language and, that sort of thing. And I can recall as a child, 9, 10 years old, having, some of the other kids talking about me in Chinese and doing one of these, I'm a white kid, right? And then the only way I could communicate is doing my Kung Fu. And then after they saw me do the Kung Fu, it was, oh, okay, it's all right.
Yeah.
And the same with, when we do demonstrations and all that, they say, oh, a white kid over there doing it, what's going on? Then they see my Kung Fu, and then they say, oh, you're one of the Fujimi's students. Okay. So an amount of acceptance.
Right.
And so that helped me a lot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine, growing up in an area that's, less than comfortable means you're going to a school that's kind of rough amongst the kids, I would imagine.
Yeah, there was an aspect of it was inner city schools and that,
Yeah.
I got into childhood fights with the childhood
Yeah.
fights. I didn't look at it as anything else but that, and when you get together with your gang, your group, not gang, but your group of kids, there's that there's that safety as well. So I don't, I wouldn't say I had problems with that aspect in my life, but definitely, yeah, there was aspect of growing up in the inner city and being cautious and being conscious of what's around you and learning,
Right.
a little bit more street sense by necessity than not. Yeah, it was funny. I grew up for many years in Cabbagetown in Toronto, which used to be very rich in the 1800s. Then it became almost ghetto-like in the 60s,
Wow.
70s, and that sort of thing. And then it became very, 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 very rich in the 90s and 2000s and that. So when I say, well, yeah, I grew up in Cabbagetown, people think I'm rich. I say, well, no, it was before that. But so when I grew up there, it was a pretty rough neighborhood. Okay. So I always had to, you walk around and your spidey senses are on. And my mom, after I moved away, my mom lived there until she passed away 10 years ago or whatever. But so when I go down and visit her, sometimes I'd have to park in sometimes a rougher area. And so again, your spidey senses are on. Then they regentified the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so they've really built it up, so it's really nice. So I find myself parking down the side street and on Sackville Street in what used to be called Regent Park, which was kind of a very rough area of the area. And automatically, boom, the spidey senses go up, and I'm walking around. And then I see a lady walk by with a fluffy jacket and her foo-foo dog, and really kind of middle upper class kind of things happening. And I just started laughing at myself because I was like, well, things have changed, and it's nice not to have that, turn on my spidey senses all the time. You don't turn them off totally, but I don't think I'm going to be attacked by somebody with a little chihuahua or anything like that, right? So interesting changes in life.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and that has to do with changes in me as well as changes in the city and changes in society and those sorts of things.
Sure.
Yeah, but certainly martial arts, kung fu and Hong Kong, learning in old Chinatown was a unique, very unique experience for me.
Yeah. I can imagine there weren't many Caucasians in the clubs at that time in the late 60s.
Yeah.
And being brought in. I can't tell looking at you that you're a quarter Chinese, so I can imagine, There wasn't, you had to kind of earn that acceptance.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And it was, no problem with Seafood Jimmy or Seafood Jack, and then
Right.
the senior students and that sort of thing, right? But there was an aspect of being the sense of being an outsider while I'm inside,
Right.
mostly because of language and culture and that sort of thing.
Right.
Um, but after a while, it's like, well, yeah, you are accepted because the teacher accepts you, and you can't, there's no question about that. So yeah.
Hmm.
Um, Initially we started in Wong Society basement on Elizabeth Street, and
Okay.
it was literally an old basement. They either played mahjong upstairs or they had Cantonese opera upstairs. It was kind of yeah, again, it was in this damp old basement, and I think I got some pictures. I might have a picture or two up of Jimmy posing there. Um, and then we moved to Foster Place on Elizabeth Street, and then on to Hagerman Street, where we were for many, many years in the Nationalist Community Center there. Hmm.
Hmm.
And then off to Augusta Street and the Nationalist Community Center there. And then when the club closed down, and I moved away and that sort of thing. Hmm.
So you're really part of the movements in Chinatown as things change too, being inside the group. And
Yep.
then you're getting an inside look at all of those different buildings and places and
Yeah.
associations that, you know, most
Yeah.
people are not insiders, don't have that access. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely. When I'm teaching now, I try to, or one of my goals, I guess, is to add a little bit of understanding of what it was like before. Not that, well, when I was young, I had a story, not that, but just to give them a flavor of the culture and the atmosphere and setting. So
mhm,
I talk, when I teach, I talk a lot and I tell a lot of stories. When Sifu Jimmy taught, he talked a lot about stories of growing up under in Victoria, Chinatown in BC, and growing up in the Kung Fu Association with the Hong Lun Association and the Freemasons and that sort of thing, and his life in Chinatown back there, and his movement to Toronto Chinatown and learning Kung Fu. So maybe I've kind of picked that up, and so I try to continue that. I think that sense of historical perspective is important for students. I want my students to know where I come from. The good, the bad, the ugly doesn't matter, right? I want them to get a sense of who Jimmy Lore was and Jack Chin was or were, because that's important. That is that is my hierarchy. That is my flow down. And sadly, I see in some clubs they don't do that as much. I'm the teacher, I'm teaching, and then that's okay. I'm not judging that. But then, I'm curious. Well, who was your teacher? What was that person like? Where did you learn martial arts? How was that? And to learn that, I think is important. So when I'm teaching Kung Fu here in Guelph, I always do that. Or if I'm giving a seminar, I'm always talking about, well, this is where I come from. This is my background. My influences are ... In some clubs, I always make a point of, I'll do the bow to the picture of their teacher up on the wall, or light the incense, and do that sort of thing, because it's important to remember that aspect that, they offered their lessons to others, and they offered them to these people. And these people are eventually going to teach it to others. So to understand that continuity of knowledge and skill, you know.
mhm.
Um, yeah, and it's important. And what I do, a few years ago, I had the senior group that I studied with and under are all gone now, or they're away from martial arts. And there's one gentleman, Bill Lamb, I see, who hasn't practiced in a long time, but he was my mentor, my scary mentor, I call. But when I do my forums or I'm practicing certain things, he is the main influence on how I kind of come across. And I had him up to my club to teach a class, and it
Wow.
was absolutely wonderful
Oh,
after
great.
decades. And I wasn't sure how he was going to teach, because I don't know, I don't even know if he can teach anymore. But so I'm introducing him. He kind of goes, pushes me aside, said, "Okay, everybody line up," and he did an absolutely wonderful job. Right? It's just one of these. Right? Okay, here I'm in charge here. But it was absolutely wonderful to see him teach, and it just brought me right back to being like 8, 9, 10 years old with him in front of the class leading. I saw him recently, and I'll have him back to the club to do another session. Because again, that is that continuity. Where does Robin Young, the Kung Fu teacher,
Right.
come from? There, and there. You know.
I think
So
one
yeah,
of the things, this generation of martial artists has lost is that sense of continuity, because everything's being mixed together, rebranded. Everyone's the guru, so to speak, or the sifu, and has their own
Yeah.
name and brand and style and teaching method, um, and you don't get that continuity. You're kind of
Mhm.
like plucked out of it and put somewhere else for marketing and to make a living.
Mhm.
These guys are
Yeah.
doing that to make a living. Uh, the old guys hardly made a living at martial arts. I mean,
Yeah.
almost
Yeah.
none of them, which is why the school kept moving,
Yeah.
which is you had to find another place. They're renting it out. You had to find another place, or if it was an association hall, and et cetera. Um, Part of the tradition of martial art is the history,
Yeah.
right? It's the
Mhm.
lineage. It's where it
Yes.
came from, how it developed, who got
Mm.
what teaching over time, maybe even in what club.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
Sifu was teaching this when we were in the basement here, but he modified it when we moved here because he thought about it more,
Yeah.
or the situations changed, or he
Mhm.
changed his mind, and just that whole process is, I find all very interesting.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Absolutely.
inspirational.
And, yeah, and the idea of our seafood change over time, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes we're so hung up on, well, no, it has to be this, 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 this.
Yeah.
Um, but the seafood change, so why can't we change a little bit too?
Of
With the
course.
memory of those things in mind.
Right.
Look at Jimmy Lore taught us one set, and 20 years later he changed it. He just from one movement to another movement, and he said it was kind of funny because it was a shift and a strike up this way into the throat. And he goes, "Oh, I don't want to teach that anymore. I'm going to teach while we block and we push the person away like that." And so, Steve, why is that? He goes, "Well, the other one's too dangerous." I go, "You realize we are, practicing and teaching, learning this
Martial
martial art
arts.
and martial." But
Right.
it was kind of funny because his rationale was, "I don't want to do that anymore because it's too dangerous."
Well, he got older and he didn't want to
Yeah,
kill everybody, and
yeah, yeah. Just wound them a little bit.
just break a clavicle. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, but again, and that's okay, right? It's the prerogative of the seafood to change to suit himself or herself, and we'll continue that. But I like telling that story because a lot of times my students and other students feel it has to be exact, and yes, it does, but you will find differences and some changes. The concepts remain the same. The principles remain the same. The technique can change. I mean,
absolutely.
where is your um, focus on the martial art? Is it at the technique level? Okay, that's fine. Is it on the principle level? Yeah, that's fine. Is it on the philosophical kind of level? That's fine. Where is it? Is it on the combative aspect? Is it on the philosophical aspect? Take 10 students, you'll probably have 10 different answers,
Mhm.
or a combination. So I look at it like that, and try to give what I can to that idea of what is martial art.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get stuck in tradition. I did for a long time, just like most
Mm-hmm.
of us coming up. We feel like our teacher's the only teacher and the best one, and
Mm-hmm.
because he's your teacher, right? But I come to realize, like, you be inspired by that history and that
Yeah.
tradition, but don't be held back by it. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
we're in a tradition of change. Everything, decades and centuries change, and these arts have been around a long time. The
Mm-hmm.
teaching method has to change. The people, society is different. you know uh, the 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 disposition of the people studying and their patience level is different, and
Yeah.
um you know
Yeah. We have to change. When I was a kid, we do an hour. When I was little and learning kung fu, we practiced horse dances for an hour.
yeah,
The front horse, side horse, both hands, all that stuff. Then we'd have tea. Then we'd come back and do our workout. You know,
yeah,
um, can't really do that as much anymore with the general population of students. It's either they're perhaps too impatient, or we don't have the time. We only have, like, I teach twice a week for an hour and a half each. I mean,
right,
if I do that, I'm not going to progress very quickly. My students aren't going to progress very quickly, and that's okay. But the idea is, well, how can we incorporate efficiency and effectiveness in our teaching and their learning, and give them the best with the time we got. Like, I don't teach 5 days a week. I teach a
right.
couple times a week, and sometimes 3 times a week. So how do I do that for the best efficiency that I can? That they definitely get the horse stance in.
Right.
They definitely get their techniques in. But I change it around a bit to suit the time that we have to practice.
I'd like to move into a different topic here that I know is
Mhm.
of interest to you and me as well, is this idea of convergence into a self-image and divergence from that over time. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of our self-image, well, it has to start off early, of course, because we're developing our sense of self as children. But the role of parents, teachers, your peers, and social media and media in general, and
Hmm.
age, right, and our experiences. But
Yeah.
what what do you what is your take on or philosophy behind this convergence of a self-image,
Mhm.
of
I think our
building of a self-image? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think when we're younger, we have all these life experiences, and they all kind of converge down to who we are, and therefore creates our image. Oh, I'm Robin the martial artist, and this and that, da, 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 and that's who I am, and that matters to me. And I want to make that matter to people who know me and other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of it all. Each of our experiences brings us to a point of discovering something about ourselves. And it's nice to be aware of that, but a lot of people aren't. They bring in the idea of self-image based on what other people expect them to be, perhaps. So, as a martial artist, well, you're going to be a great tournament fighter, Robin. I never was, didn't go that far, but I didn't pursue that. Or just as an example, or you're going to be a great this, or you're going to be a great that. And my expectation is dot, dot, dot. Therefore, the development of me in that is, well, I am going to accomplish these things to get to that imagio, that image of who I am expected to be. And that's good. I mean, it promotes growth. It is a motivator. It is a way forward. I think it does have problematic areas in it, and that depending on my maturity level, that I give up my own sense of self for somebody else's sense of self for me. So you are creating me. I am not creating myself. There's a danger in that.
It's hard to
And I
avoid.
think sometimes the martial. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was just saying it's hard to avoid that
Yeah.
until you get a sense of wanting to be your own person.
Yes.
Your
Yeah.
parents are forming you, but then the teachers are forming you.
Yeah.
Your peers in the classroom, that your friend group is really has a lot of sway in forming your
Mhm.
behaviors early on,
Yeah.
and your sense of decisions and right and wrong and etc.
Yeah.
Um, and all the media. I mean, how
Oh,
do we
absolutely.
how does somebody early on kind of wade through that?
Again, I think it goes back to maturity and self-awareness.
Hmm.
Some people are very self-aware and mature early on, and they can kind of say, well, yeah, and that kind of pushes us in different paths. I don't want to be a martial artist. I want to be an artist. So we veer our path. Years ago, when I studied Aikido, I didn't study it for a long time, a few years. And the sensei knew I did Kung Fu as well. It's very okay, but I know no big problem. But he did tell me, he goes, okay, yeah, no problem. But at some point, you'll have to make a decision. And a few years later, I went up and said, Kameda Sensei, I said, I can't continue to practice. I need to go back to my Kung Fu practice. And he goes, okay, good. He was very happy, shook my hand and everything else and wished me well. So, sometimes we can determine that ourselves, sometimes other people will determine it for us. But I think, we have to be conscious of, well, we have all these influences, and a lot of it has to do with acceptance. If I do this, therefore I'm accepted. And sometimes that has to do with securities or insecurities. Sometimes I'm just young and this is the easiest path to go. Then there's nothing wrong with that. As we get older, we kind of decide, well, yeah, I do have all these skills. I have martial arts, this, that, and they all kind of converge down to make me who I am, or who I feel I should be, or how I feel others should see me. Okay.
Right.
And that's, Robin Young, the professor of paramedicine. That's Robin Young, the anatomist. That's Robin Young, the martial artist. That's Robin Young, just using myself for the example. But at a certain point, it kind of reverses from kind of coming like this more to this. So instead of external motivations telling me who I am. That's kind of me telling me who I am to all these external influences. So, so Robin Young, the martial artist, talking about Robin Young, the professor of paramedicine,
Right.
or Robin Young, the professor in paramedicine, talking about Robin Young, the martial artist, and, bringing those lessons forward. So I think it's important at a certain end, and at a certain age, we kind of go, right? It doesn't matter what people think of us. Does it matter that, well, you think I'm a lousy martial artist, or, in 1972, I remember, who cares, and I'm, if I'm going to get stuck on that, and we all do to some extent, but if I'm going to get stuck on that, that's really holding me back, so from, allowing others to form me, or allowing others to form what I think I should be, it's me letting know these others who I am, and or not caring what they think. I remember years ago, and a friend of mine, an elder person, not elder, but like I was a teenager, he was in his 40s. He goes, I really don't care what other people think of me. And I said, oh, okay. And I never really understood it until later in my life. It's kind of like, well, yeah, I don't care if you like me or not. I've got things to do, and I'm going to try not to let it affect me. Sometimes it does, of course, we're human. But I'm going to try not to let it affect me too much, because I got other things to do, and setting up those boundaries and those points to say, well, yes, I will allow that, or no, I will not allow that. I mean, if it's important enough that I hear it, I hope I hear it. If it's your impression of something, it's, well, okay, if you keep your impression, it makes you happy.
Right.
Yeah. I was in a bar having a beer, and there was a karate sensei that always came in, and I'd got time buying beers and sort of a lot of respect and that sort of thing. But he excuses himself to go down to the bathroom one time, and comes back up, and his face is all flushed, and he's all confused, his hair is all messed up. The sensei, what happened? He goes, oh, I went down to the bathroom, and this man come up and he started punching me. And I'm thinking, oh, there's probably a dead body down there. This guy is good enough, he'd clear out the whole bar, right? So I go, Sensei, are you okay? He goes, yeah. And I said, is he okay? He goes, oh, yeah. I said, did you hit him? He goes, no. He wants to hit me. It makes him happy. That's okay.
Huh.
It took me a long time to kind of figure out what the heck is he talking about, but yeah, he didn't really care. He goes, that's fine. It wasn't an issue. Whereas perhaps I would have either fought back and tried to destroy this person, or gotten destroyed, or if I walked away but felt really bad that I didn't meet the expectation that I set for myself, or perhaps that others set for me. Well, what do you mean you didn't beat him up? Well, aren't you a big martial artist? So a very interesting perspective, and I kind of look at that and say, well, yeah, that who am I and who am I to others is, well, who do I want to be to other people? I remember years ago, I went through a little bit of a teaching conundrum with martial arts. Why am I teaching? I think perhaps a lot of martial arts teachers do this. Why am I teaching? What are people learning from me? I mean, am I teaching stuff that my teacher wanted me to teach? What I assume they want to teach? When an amount of confusion. And I bumped into an old gentleman, Tai Chi practitioner, who practiced with us a little while, and an artist, a visual artist, a painter, and that sort of thing. And I just bumped into him in Ottawa. I was at a conference for the college, and after we sit and have our tea and chit-chatting. And I say, I need to ask you something. Explain my situation. I said, why do people learn from me? What am I teaching for? And he goes, what do you want them to learn? That was his answer. And I was like, again, taking it away from the expectation of others, what do they want to learn from me? Well, what do I want to teach them? And it was one of those epiphanies, right? The brick in the side of the head to wake you up. And it was, and I had to laugh, because it was a very instant realization, of, wow, yeah, just let's flip the perspective, Robin. What do I want to teach them? Yes, what do they want to learn, but what do I want to teach them? Maybe they're not ready to learn what they want to learn, right? But I have to recognize that, and not just fall into, well, okay, I'll teach them. Yeah. What do I want to teach them? And for me, that was the rescue statement for me at the time of, well, why do I teach?
Yeah, that's really interesting because it flips the script from the students are in charge to the teachers in charge. In the old school, the teacher, you came to the teacher's like horse stance for an
Yeah,
hour.
yeah,
He's teaching the tradition and the way that he wants to teach. You can stay or go.
yeah.
And we've really morphed into the martial arts society, in the 2000s and 2020s, into a here's all the students coming in, what's their goals and expectations, and how can I meet them so we don't lose the students, so we can pay the rent and make a living.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is flipped. And I remember in the 90s when people started, they took a thing here in the United States was the Arthur Murray Dance Studio franchise, and they used that to build a martial arts studio franchise,
Hmm.
um, sales platform and collection company for the contracts. And they used that, and it was mostly for kids
Hmm.
and families, and people were shrinking their curriculum and adding more belts and doing
Hmm.
birthday parties and all kinds
Hmm.
of different things. And I said to my friends who in the 80s were so hardcore into the real kung fu, and now they're all having, we are a black belt club, and yes,
Hmm.
we can, and high fiving the kids. And he goes, yeah, but I'm only doing this so I can have money, and then I could just teach the ones I want to teach, what I want to teach. But they never got to that.
Yeah.
They because they stayed, because the time they weren't teaching this new method of franchise martial arts, they were running the business end of it and the marketing end of it, and ordering supplies to sell in the pro shop. They weren't actually and now they're like, a lot of them, the brains are out of the old school stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
completely. And I always have a problem with students who, I want to teach my way, and some of the students don't practice, and they have to go.
Hmm.
I feel like I'm wasting my hour,
Yeah.
that I'd rather just practice by myself on that hour or spend time meditating, that it's better,
Hmm.
better than the whatever dollars they're giving me for that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But again, you can't run a business that way.
That's right.
But but you're doing what you want to do for you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a medium in there where you can be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a few people in the area who run clubs very, very successfully. They've balanced the business aspect, the martial art aspect,
Mhm.
um, and at a certain point, perhaps they reach that thing where they can, focus more on the art and the business carries itself, and that's the ideal.
That would be
That's the
great.
ideal. It's when my sense is it's when you're kind of struggling with the business aspect where you really have to play with the art aspect, you know. But but whatever bakes the cake, I think there's a lot of phenomenal martial art out there. Yeah, but us old timers, definitely it's different. The same thing, when Jack was doing the majority of teaching at the old club, if he saw you, kind of squirming or not paying attention, he'd say, "Okay, well, go take a rest." Okay, go take a rest, and then you come back on the floor. He goes, "No, no, you're finished for the day." It's like, what? When you're finished for the day, you're tired. Go home, watch TV. The idea of, well, we really can't do that too much anymore because
Right.
we don't have any students. We have to close down. So we have to find a balance of motivating them to work, but also enjoy themselves. Yeah, to an extent. So I look back at old Chinatown, and actually, I'm writing a new book, by the way.
Oh, great.
Kind of finished it. Um, My friend's putting it together, and I'm looking for a publisher.
You got it.
Anyway,
I'd love,
but
yeah, send it
it's
over. I'd love to read
okay.
it, read the
Yeah,
manuscript and
yeah, yeah.
offer. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Is it
But
philosophical based or
uh,
technique based?
a bit of both. It's more historical based.
Nice.
I look at my experience, and it's eventually I'll write about my school specifically, Jimmy Lower
Yeah.
Jackson. But this one's about and you think about that trend, that shifting into something different. There was an old gentleman who dropped by the club in the late 60s, early 70s. Lao Yat Dim is his name. And, in the old days, old people drop by the club just to watch, because they're in Toronto and they don't speak language, so they look for the familiar. And so they come and watch the classes or have a cup of tea and that sort of thing. And this one gentleman, Mr. Lau, asked, I guess I assuming they got into conversation about, well, yeah, I do kung fu, I did kung fu, blah blah blah. So Jimmy actually allowed him to teach a little bit, and he taught my seniors, mukjong,
Oh.
mukjong
Hmm.
form, a wooden man form, and some technique. That's all I know. And they taught me. I remember seeing the gentleman at the club, this old, distinguished kind of looking. That's all I know about him. And, for me, like, so much has been lost in martial art. Oh, I knew this one guy that he's dead. I don't know much about him. Sadly, this gentleman's story was, I didn't know him, and by the time I got thinking about it enough, he's dead, everybody's dead, that my Sifu's dead, so I can't go back to that. But I've got a couple of pictures of him. I got a form that I learned. I got some techniques that I learned. So I kind of wrote a book based on the form, Mukjong form, but put it in a historical perspective of immigration to Canada. So he was of the age probably where perhaps he came, early 1900s, probably to help build the railroad, or shortly after that period. As part of the migration of Chinese from the West Coast east, Toitanese. And back then, everybody was Toitan in Chinatown, right? They all came to
All
the
our
same area.
Chinatowns were built, and
Yeah, exactly.
railroads.
Yeah.
Toisan.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So the kind of premise of the book is just little glimpses of that aspect, little glimpses of the old club, the relationship with Jimmy Lore and with Lau, and then moving into the form, and then the how-to of the form. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a pet project that I came across or thought up and think, well, if I don't write it down, then Mr. Lau's legacy is gone. I threw it out on some Toyson Facebook groups. Does anybody know this man from late 1960s? No, nothing. So I would hope somebody would know him. My senior, Bill, knew him. He learned from him, but he was kind of young too. And he goes, well, didn't ask questions. He just did his kung fu. He could tell me a little bit, but that was it. And Jimmy told a couple of stories, but so with a little bit of knowledge, I decided, well, let's put this guy on paper. Let's give him a history. Let's give him a life.
Yeah.
Let's make sure he isn't lost. So I think that in martial arts is important because we can only go so many generations back before it gets lost. And my own sense is, well, getting to media and getting to what is the real aspect of things is based on our memories, and sometimes our memories can be false or manipulated. So, I look at, well, what do I remember of Jimmy Lore? What do I remember of Jackson? And so, fortunately, when I was probably late teens into 20s and 30s, when he talked, I'd write it down, right? Sorry, I'd write stuff down. So I've got some notes that are kind of from him, and I interviewed him a few times, like I loved his stories. And so he'd tell a story, and then I'd go home right away and write it down as well as I can remember it to get as close as possible. So, I try to keep it as accurate from my memory. My perspective, certainly other people's perspective would be different, but this is my perspective of it. If I don't do that, then that rich history is lost. I look at, well, that is certainly my perspective of who Jimmy Lore was, and the Kung Fu Club and Jack Chan and that. I think sometimes all I have to do is say something, whether I believe it or not, and that tends to become the truth that other people carry on. And I think we have to be careful with that. I mean, going back to your statement, well, my Sifu was the best Sifu. He was the king of Chinatown. He beat up all these people, and Kung Fu was the best. Maybe so, from a perspective,
Right.
or a club pride thing, or things like that. Going back to our image, our image of ourselves, but also the image of another person. When we look at the Viet Minh movies, wonderful movies, wonderful entertainment. Sadly, in a generation or two, part of that is going to become the reality of who Viet Minh was. Oh yeah, he's a hero during World War II, whatever the case is, and it may not be true, but that becomes the Bruce Lee. There's an aspect of that is almost cultic,
mythological.
Yeah. And that's dangerous.
Sort of nation building,
Yeah, absolutely.
that has not really a lot to do with historical fact, but with
Yeah.
historical concept and historical
Yeah.
fiction
Yeah.
to help
Yeah.
lift up the people and the culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
We
know,
want to fill in, we want to fill in blanks,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
sometimes we have to be careful with doing that, I guess is my point here.
I like the project that you're doing, and a couple of reasons. One, um, I'm here just outside Philadelphia, and we have an old Chinatown. It's
Hmm.
small, but it's old, and there's so many people there who do kung fu that you don't know because they don't run schools, right? So there's a kung fu Lung Ying Kun master, dragon boxing from Hong Kong, who runs an herb shop and does Ditta medicine. Nobody
Hmm.
knows he does kung fu. He
Yeah.
doesn't show it. He doesn't advertise it. And we go have coffee or we have lunch, and these guys will come up. Oh, he's speaking Cantonese. He's like, oh, he does Juk Lum. That guy's Hung Kyun. This guy does Mantis. I'm like, they're all around, but you'd never
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they can't make a living and they're not advertising it. And it's part of their self identity, not their outward identity.
Yes.
So we talk about that self-image again.
Hmm.
And then you happen to find somebody from, you know, 1900s who comes in and is from two generations before you or
Yeah.
three generations before you at a time when the Toisan Chinese were just coming here and bringing in a tradition that's so old, and like not modified by marketing or business. It's just here's the lessons I got. We don't know if he got everything or part of a thing, but he's
Hmm.
sharing that with you. And it's when you're learning that Mukjan form or other things, it's an embodied knowledge that he's sharing. I mean, you learn the techniques in a form, say 50 movements in a set, make up a number, and each one of there's nothing there.
Hmm.
It's ethereal, but you have it in your body.
Yeah.
And this guy has it in his body, and he has it in his body, but it's not written and you can't see it until somebody does it, not like a
Yeah.
plant or a book, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
a sculpture, but that those movements contain within it the history of generations, the lineage of the style, the teachings of the master, the philosophy of the art, and that's all embodied in those movements that you're carrying.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if we don't write them down, they're gone,
Yeah.
especially amongst the masters that nobody knew
Yeah.
about. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much depth there
Yeah.
philosophically,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
that one of the reasons I never left martial arts is because there's like just too much to do. There's too
Yeah.
much to learn. There's so many ways
Exactly.
to develop in it, right?
Yeah.
Now you want to learn
Yeah.
Ditta, you want to learn medicine, you want to meditate, you want to
Hmm.
get stronger, you got to work on your flexibility. Okay, you got the self-defense in the beginning, and now, now it's more of this tradition and what
Hmm.
other Sihings do I have or Siboks, martial uncles can I
Yeah.
learn from? And it's culturally now you want to be part of a Chinese culture, Asian culture, learn about their food, their language, and their books, and maybe the opera and the music, uh,
Hmm.
or not. But it's all available there
Yeah.
just through this little
Yeah.
keyhole of martial
Yeah.
arts.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's an open door. It opens doors.
big
Absolutely.
big
Absolutely.
opening of doors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
talk to you a little bit about
Hmm.
something that you mentioned early on, which is the role of failure,
Hmm.
um, and generally failure in life, and why it's so important, and we shouldn't run from it.
Yeah. I think we're all experts in failure because
Yeah,
we've done so much of it, right? I think,
that's oxymoron, expert in failure. Yeah.
yeah. There's a new book.
The new book.
Um, I think, I forget who said it or what was said, but, it said there's no such thing as failure, just lessons,
Right.
and it took me a long time to kind of learn that lesson and not look back and say, oh, that was a failed thing. And yeah, they were, I think part of that in general, depending on what the thing is that you gauge success or failure on, again, it's external. You went to a tournament, you failed. You failed your black belt test. You failed your assignment. It's a definite thing. It's not there's no black or white there. You failed. Period. Um, and that can be transformative in a couple of ways. A lot of times in the negative kind of way, because you haven't met the expectation of some external thing, a person, a teacher, a project, you know, a religion, whatever. You haven't met that expectation, therefore you are less than. And that you know, that has caused problems in so many people over time, and it's diverted them from a path that perhaps they could have excelled in. But because they diverted, they'll never know. You know, I've diverted, so I'll never know. You know, other people have diverted, so they'll never know. It just shifts your path. But you know, the idea of failure as a lesson, and again, going back to what is the circumstance of it. If it's, well, okay, I failed my assignment at school, therefore I better study more so I pass, because the goal is I want to be paramedic, an architect, a doctor, whatever. So, you know, that becomes a motivator in a positive sense. Excuse me. The idea that a failure can destroy people, absolutely. You know, depending on how it's conveyed to them. You know, you think of the overbearing mentor. You're a failure. You're nothing. You're negative, 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 negative. Bang, bang, bang. Crush. You know, knock you down so much that whatever you do, you think you're a failure in. So, you know, that is a very negative extreme of it. The idea of, you know, the people that this is thinking of this. I don't know how I was going to come across, but the lookouts that failed to see, say, the iceberg on the Titanic, you know, oh, absolutely horrible thing. You know, 1,000 people, 1,800 people died, whatever. You know, that is definitely a failure. You know, what rose from that is probably, yeah, well, let's pay attention, right? Let's keep a better lookout. Let's do this. Let's create technology. Let's do that. You know, so the lesson in that quote unquote failure became a shift to move things forward a bit. You know, I don't think after that there were too many ships that hit icebergs. You know, that's kind of a general kind of example. You know, I fail a test, I work harder to get it. Or, you know, I fail something, and whoever my mentor is says, well, you know, you didn't do good on that, but where did it go wrong? You know, where do you feel it went wrong? Where did da, 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 da. So shifting the lesson into a beat down to where can we pull you up from? So the idea of failure as a positive influence, you know, I look at things where I failed it in the past have pushed me into a better place, or they've taught me that, well, I'm not good at that, so I don't need to do that. You know, again, looking at who do I define myself as? You know, I did ice climbing for one season. I wasn't very good at it, and that's okay. I tried it. You know, and for a period in the 80s and early 90s, I was trying all kinds of different things, you know, ice climbing, rock climbing, whatever, and just to see if I liked them as a hobby or as, you know, something I could pursue in that. And some things I became fairly good at, and okay, that was good. It reached its point that I felt okay that I didn't, I could pursue it or not, my decision. Some things is like, nah, I am never going to be good at this, you know, and so that's fine. That was a lesson I learned. But I think, you know, failure as a positive influence depends on how it is framed from the outside in, the outside to me. If, again, using me as an example, or you or whoever, it doesn't matter. And the consequence of that failure. Again, you know, if I forget to tighten a bolt in an airplane, that's not a good thing, you know, or you know, don't do something that creates a lot of damage. Well, absolutely, that's a failure, and there's the consequences of that can be very, very tragic. You know, sadly, the lesson from that is after that disaster or whatever happens, excuse me, then whatever positive can come out of it, so it doesn't happen again. In say a person's life, that the aspect of failure in school or martial arts, whatever. It's going to depend on the outside interpretation and how they kind of drag the good things out of that makes it a positive lesson. You know, in college, having to tell somebody they failed a course, say, for example, you know, there are strict standards that, you know, say you have to meet, and, you know, they did not meet those requirements. That's very difficult. It was very difficult for me to kind of put that forward, because, you know, you always wish for the best for people, but in some cases that was the, you know, that's the only outcome, because I'm limited on what I can do. But in some cases, it ended up being a good outcome where, you know, that student came back to me and said, well, thank you for that, because I needed an extra year to get through, you know, whatever I had going on in my life to be able to focus on school, you know. And I'd rather be a good paramedic who knew my stuff than somebody who kind of knew it but was distracted, right? And I think you also have to look at the reason for the failure. You know, was it distraction? Was it underpreparedness? Was it not caring? Was it more nefarious? You know, sabotage, for example. So, you know, the idea of, well, what is failure, and how does it affect us in life? Every point in our life is a you know, a success failure scenario. I make coffee in the morning. Is it good? Is it bad? You know, I step outside. Is it cold or is it hot? Do I have the right shoes on? Do I have the right coat on? You know, you can look at each one of those as, you know, success failure. The importance of it and the weight of it and the consequence of it differ. You know, as a martial artist, you know, I know lots of people who felt very, 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 very horrible because they failed the tournament, or they lost the tournament. And that is the phrase, well, you lost the tournament. You know, you lost in your category, or you failed in your category. And it's like, you know, yes, you know, that's true. I did not meet that standard. Does that push me forward to become better so I can meet that standard? Or does that standard keep shifting that I may never get it? You know, sometimes I know in you know, just looking over my history in martial arts, sometimes I've seen that where I meet the standard, then whoever's in charge changes the standard. It's like, no, I got to change it. And maybe that's an attempt, the example I'm thinking of, to draw that person upward, or maybe it was an attempt to make sure they never are successful. Even though they're successful all the way up here, you know, it's chasing the dragon. You never catch it, right? You never catch it. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, what is the motivation behind it? You know, so I think, you know, there's all kinds of things, you know, the idea of failing as a positive thing. You know, if, you know, there's situations where failing in something is the best thing that could happen in your life. And there's certainly aspects where you fail and it's the worst thing that can happen in your life. And, you know, everything in between, you know. I don't know if that addresses that, but
I think a lot of that idea of when you feel like a failure is, again, getting back to our earlier conversation piece about self-image. You know, you feel like a failure, and because you know that your parents or your coach or your instructors or your teammates are going to look down on you for not doing something. Your parents are going to be upset you failed your final exam, you know. And this kind of, again, it's that outward stuff. But if you're, I always look at it as, well, I just didn't get it right yet, you know. I didn't fail at it, I just haven't gotten it right yet. And then just like ice climbing, you think, do I enjoy this or not enjoy it? And if I haven't gotten it right yet and it's not so enjoyable, you don't really want to go. So you shift to some, you know, your energy into something else. I mean, we can't really shift until you're out of high school or college. You know, you have to pass certain exams, and with an employer, but everything else in life. And I think one of the lessons I pulled from martial arts as a young kid, and probably you as well, is that the teacher made you, in the old days at least, made you do it, the front kick 8,000 times till you got it right, and the form until you got it right, and the technique until you got it right. Nobody got an automatic pass like they do now. It's crazy. I remember in my in like 1980 in the Taekwondo school I was a member of, I was like a little bit of a hot shot. I could do all kinds of jump spinning kicks and things. And I failed my blue belt or my red belt test, you know, after blue, red, black in that school. And it's like, how did I fail? Well, the mechanics on my jump spin kick was good in the air, but the mechanic was actually, the hip mechanic was wrong. So when I hit the object, I would just hit and my leg would come down. I didn't have it right. And it destroyed me. I mean, how can I fail this test? This is my life, you know. This is what I do. I got the best jump spinning. Everybody else, their legs down toward the ground. Mine's all tucked up, but my mechanic wasn't right. And without doing that test, I would never know that I didn't have a strong jump spinning kick. And I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it until I could actually hit targets and heavy bags and things and do things that I couldn't do before with the pretty looking one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea of whose perspective are we considering? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
my
exactly it.
perspective, I'm perfect, of course. You know, their
Well, duh.
perspective, maybe not so much. No,
Well,
yeah,
duh.
yeah,
But the Lord
and
doesn't lie.
yeah, yeah. But that's sometimes the role of the teacher to control, well, to help you control your ego. You know,
Right.
absolutely. I've thought of the same sort of thing. I'm great at this, and somebody goes, well, not really. You
Yeah.
know, maybe you should work on these other things. It's like writing. You know, you know, in high school, the final essays I wrote in grade 13, I thought they were great. You know,
Yeah.
and I got a horrible mark on them because my ego thought it was great. The subject matter was great. My writing style sucked, you know. And
Yeah.
looking back at it years later, I laugh and say, wow, how did I even get a pass on this stupid thing?
Right.
Um, but it was that awareness, but it was an attack to the ego, you know,
Sure.
an attack to the ego that says, well, no, of course I'm good. And it has to be somebody that has to tell you that, well, no, you're not. You know, that is a failure, or that is not as good as, and these are the reasons why. Um, Sometimes I think the damage in told you're a failure or told that you failed something is in the explanation of it. You know, and in the old days, it was, yeah, exactly. Just do it until you get it better. You know,
Yeah.
do it until you get it better. Just keep going. That front kick, that side kick, that horse stance, or whatever. Do it until you get it better. Until the Sifu goes, walks away, right? You know, a funny story about Jimmy. You know, we do our sets at the end of every class. We'd all do our sets. We pull out the drum and start banging and that sort of thing. And Jimmy always sat there and he'd always look, always just watch. And for years, I thought it was critical. I wasn't, you know, not doing good, not doing good, not doing good. Until years later, I figured out you just had a twitch, like a facial twitch, right? And had nothing to do, right? You'd say, yeah, that's good. Yeah, it wouldn't turn out he just had a twitch, and it was like, oh my gosh. But the idea of, well, where is the message coming, or how am I interpreting the message of failure? You know, with Sifu Jimmy, it was totally wrong. It was just this kind of thing, and I'm interpreting that as something it totally wasn't. You know,
Right.
you know, but this body language. Is it congruent with the messages? That body language is saying no, his voice is saying yes. It's like, what do I do with that? But yeah, it depends on how the message is given, I think, and what is the motivation of the person giving that to you.
Right.
So, you know, don't Mark, you're failing at this thing. Here's how to fix it. Okay, you're a failure at this thing. You'll never get it right.
Right.
Don't
Right.
bother.
You'll never get it right. That you'll never get it right imprints into the brain.
Yeah.
Here's how to
Yeah.
fix it is a different kind of an imprint. You know, that's more positive and constructive.
And yeah, that was the other thing. If you argue the point, and whoever it is says, "Okay, yeah, you're right," you know, and you either go, "Yeah, damn right, I'm right," or you go,
Yeah.
"Oh,
He doesn't want to
like
argue
that."
anymore. Yeah.
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 But you know, in the end, I know that idea of the message of failure has crushed people,
Right.
and it's even if they've continued on, say in martial arts or whatever, they're not generally, but I know some examples over the years where they're always there to prove a point, you know, and I can kind of relate it back to the instance where, you know, you were told this and therefore you're going to prove everybody wrong and just keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that message of failure has formed that person, or, you know, idea that basically, yeah, you know, the person would have to hammer it down everybody's throat that he's not a failure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if you've seen that, but I've certainly seen it in my time.
Yeah.
And is that a good thing or bad thing? Well, you know, I'm not judging, but I kind of see it as, well, it is a way someone was developed. Okay, was developed from external stimulus, you know, stimuli that, you know, push the person along a path. You know, brilliant martial artists, but what is their motivation for being that brilliant?
I want to move into a final segment. And when I think about you writing this book about this kung fu gentleman that nobody knows,
Yeah,
it's like you're establishing his legacy.
yeah,
You know, you're chronicling something from a time and place in his life that nobody would ever know about. And I wonder what it is and what your thought process is on why life legacy feels so important to people.
Mhm.
And there's two perspectives. One is you're writing his something for his legacy. That's not you. And the other
Yeah.
is we do things to establish our legacy. And
Mhm.
I've written a bunch of books. You've written a book, you're writing another one,
Mhm.
or you do videos or something else because
Mhm.
you want that helps establish your legacy.
Mhm.
But what do you care when you're gone? I mean, why are these things important? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's excellent question. And when we're gone, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
I mean, it's like I'm not going
But
to
we're
remember.
so
I'm not
tied
going to
up in
care.
our legacy and the idea of a legacy, which is, um, yeah, I love reading books. I love reading history books about people, their lives, their struggles, their journeys,
Mhm.
because it helps me. It
Yeah.
helps inform me, and I learn from the past. I learn from other people's journeys. But
Yeah.
I never think of my own life. I haven't really thought of my own life legacy since
Mhm.
maybe in my mid 30s when the
Mhm.
ego was like, I need a book on this. I have to do this.
Yeah.
Then I have to meet this
Yeah.
guy and I have to teach this. And,
Yeah.
now in my
Yeah.
mid 50s, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you look at all the books behind you. All that is part of somebody's legacy.
Oh, yeah.
And if they didn't write those books, or you didn't write those books, or perhaps I didn't write the book, and hopefully the next one, yeah, again, we're just kind of lost in history as far as that is concerned.
Right.
I think life legacy, it absolutely is a way to be remembered. It's a way to perhaps bring all our life thoughts, philosophy, skill, um, to bring it forward so other people can look at it. And absolutely it'll be judged, good, bad, or otherwise. It doesn't matter. Dead. I don't care. What do I care? But the idea of, well, there it is, folks. Do with it what you will. But this is what I've done. You know,
Yeah.
my partner's father just wrote two wonderful kind of self-published, very limited things. One was on letters from his
Mm,
family going back to the 1800s.
wow.
They're phenomenal letter writers.
That's a legacy right
Yeah,
there.
yeah. And he's got photographs. They put them in book form. It's kind of a beautiful thing.
Wow.
Um, and so one's on letters, and the other's kind of a life history, or a biography, autobiography kind of thing. And what a statement. First to have the patience and tenacity to write all that stuff down, to interpret the written letters and type them out, to transcribe them over. But a beautiful piece of history, because our past is exactly that. If we write it down and recapture it somehow, it is an image into the past. So the book I'm writing hopefully gives people a little image of old Chinatown in the 60s and 70s. You know, um, so it leaves something behind. And again, going back to what people may think of us will be based on memories. And those memories may be positive, negative, neutral, whatever, but they're people's memories. And our brains work in a way that we always want to fill in blanks. So did that happen? I don't know. Let's say it did. And therefore it does, as far as the history is concerned. If that didn't happen, okay, let's say it didn't happen. I mean, it's variable. If we write it down, at least we have a say in what our history was about, or who we were, or what our thoughts were, and that sort of thing. So in that case, this podcast is going to be part of your legacy,
Right.
because it's telling people, well, this is what Mark did. This is the people he's talked to. These are the things they talked about. And it becomes a document for the future. Sadly, if you think of all the old Kung Fu people that just ran their business and then died in obscurity, what a loss of knowledge
Yeah.
people didn't even know these
Wisdom,
people existed.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, part of the writing, when I look back at the history, is, well, what came with all the Chinese immigrants from Quezon area in the south there? The music, the cuisine, the martial arts, the singing, all this beautiful cultural stuff. How many people actually had a chance to practice that while they're, hammering on a railroad?
Right.
How many people pursued it after the railroad was finished because they had to earn a living? How many people, dot, dot, dot. And you think of everything that was lost, the people who died on the railroad, or the mines, or the forests, right?
Right.
Forestry. What was lost and can never be replaced, right? So, the idea of even simple legacy, leaving a book, or leaving a podcast, or leaving something behind. It gives our children, oh yeah, this is what dad did, and hopefully grandchildren, oh, this is what granddad did, or great, whatever. I can't go back and if I wrote down something, oh yeah, just like my grandfather used to say, I don't know, I never knew. Right?
Right.
So how far back do we go where our genetic legacy just disappears? Some people can go back quite far, 16th, 17th centuries, and that's wonderful. Ancestry DNA has opened up all kinds of wonderful, wonderful things on understanding our past and our ancestry.
Yeah.
But this is a chance for us to actually say something about it, about me, about you, about whatever, which will give people a sense of who we are. And for me, that's what that life legacy thing is. And my son actually brought it up, and I didn't even think of the term. And I said, "Oh, Liam, I'm writing another book." And he goes, "Oh, you're adding it to your life legacy." And I went, "What's that?" Right? And he had to explain it to me because he took philosophy and stuff like that. It was kind of the need for us to be remembered,
Yeah.
and absolutely on kind of an emotional, psychological level, but also on the practical level. I studied Kung Fu since 1968. I learned a couple of things.
Yeah.
Here they are, and so it's a way that I can hopefully be remembered, but just as importantly, how my Stiefel could be remembered.
Mm-hmm.
And the very, 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 very few points, Mark, of the sentences I have, how Jimmy described his teachers. Oh, so and so, yeah, he ran a grocery store in Chinatown. That's all I know about this guy.
All right.
This guy went back to China, got in a fight, and died. That's all I know about this guy, right? But you wonder, I wish, of course, now that we have the questions, the people who can answer them are dead. And I'm fortunate that I asked people Jimmy questions when I could, and he was very forthcoming with answers. Now I got better questions, or more in-depth questions. Now that I've learned a little bit how to interview people or what questions to ask, and that, he's no longer there to answer the question, which is sad. I mean, because that means that legacy is limited, right? So, but I'm glad I did ask him the questions that I did when I could. Because what it did is gave me a glimpse of his path and his life, and so hopefully I can forward that.
Robin, as we close out, I'd like to ask my guests about maybe how they see perhaps the greatest or the most meaningful transformation that's happened to them, either over the course of their life or at a given time.
Now, that's a tough question. Very simple,
very tough.
but very, very tough. Oddly, I'd have to say growing up poor, because it pushed a path, and the path had kind of a this way or that way switch. And I credit my mom, my late mom, was saying, even though we grew up this way, go that way. Pushing education. And if she didn't make, and I can bring it down to one decision where she fought to get me in a different high school than I was, that it pushed my education into a university education and academic education and the academic field of work and teaching, and then on and on and on. So, if I looked at one transformative thing, it would probably be that, and my mom's decision on shifting my goal, or shifting my path to a goal.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I really enjoyed our conversation. I can't wait to see you again.
Yeah.
Next time you come down here, or I head up to Canada.
Well, I hope to be down there soon, this year sometime, or early next year. I would love to see you and visit Philly, and and visit New York again. I know we went on a little trip there, a little road trip, which was absolutely wonderful. But it's absolute pleasure to be here, and I look forward to our meeting again.